Okay, are we at 1-0? Okay, good. Okay, good evening. I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting of the City of Bloomington Committee of the Whole to order. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Walsh.
Here.
Councilmember Bolin.
Here.
Councilmember Motney. Oh, Councilmember Emig.
Present.
Councilmember Becker.
Here.
Councilmember Irvin.
Here.
Councilmember Ward.
Yes.
Councilmember Crabill.
Here.
Councilmember Crumpler.
Here.
Mayor Milawamwe.
Here. Next item on the agenda is public comment. Madam Clerk, do we have any public comment?
We do. We've got quite a list, actually. We did not receive any emailed public comments, so you didn't get any of that. And we've got 7 people present.
Okay, sounds good. Public comment is an opportunity for speakers to provide their views and feedback to the City Council. It is also an opportunity for the City Council to listen and hear diverse points of view. To maximize the impact of public comment and show respect for the expression of all views, speakers should maintain civility and focus on city issues. Speakers must identify themselves for the record, but are not required to give their address. Each speaker is given the floor for 3 minutes, and the council does not respond or engage in debate. Any speaker that engages in threatening or disorderly behavior will be deemed out of order and their time ceased. Okay.
And first up, we have Karen Irvin. And then to follow will be Jordan Baker.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I am Karen Irvin, and I am a volunteer with McLean County Moms Demand Action. And I appreciate this opportunity to comment in support of the Special Commission on Gun Violence, which is being considered. Before I give a few comments, I feel the need to read from a letter that was written just today by one of the leads, one of the people that's behind me. We have a lot of members here tonight who reached out to our community partners and churches because as a group, we refuse to be numb to the impacts of gun violence in all of its forms. We know we don't have to live this way. And so I briefly just want to read from this. With the tragic news out of Buffalo, New York on Saturday, McLean County Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America is sending our concern and support. According to law enforcement, a white supremacist terrorist who believes in replacement theory specifically targeted Black people. We acknowledge the trauma, not only for those immediately impacted, the victims, the friends and family of those killed or injured, the first responders, but for our Black brothers and sisters in this community. While words of support are necessary, we know that they're not enough. We reaffirm our commitment to end gun violence in all of its forms. While we work diligently with our community partners to eliminate gun violence and its root causes, one of which is racism, we must also support and care for one another along the way. We hold you in our hearts, not just when tragedy occurs, but every day. As brothers and sisters in our community, we stand with you. Moms Demand Action believes that we do need a coalition of community activists and leaders to take a look at how and where our own communities are bearing the heaviest burden of gun violence. Although a quick look at WGLT Shots Fired map will support the fact that there is a concentration in our neighborhoods on the west side. But we need a coalition of community activists and leaders to acknowledge why that is and to implement the research and hopefully real solutions. We trust the formation of this special commission with the inclusion of a truly diverse group of stakeholders as recommended, We think it's a step towards understanding the data and undoubtedly moving into action. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Karen.
Next up, we'll have Jordan Baker, and then to follow Kathy Norton.
Okay.
Hello. My name is Jordan Baker, and I live on Washington Street. First, I want to thank the mayor and council for their very productive discussions regarding the state of our roads and how to better fund and repair them. And that is why I'm speaking tonight. You all have, from what I understand, about $6 to $10 million in unappropriated ARPA funds. And I believe it is best spent on repairing roads, especially ones that have a low rating. But I also want to highlight that roads with higher ratings, but with potholes and other issues, should also be prioritized. When I drive down a newer road with a pothole, I run over them each time. And I don't think, wow, this road surface is great. It's 99% great. I think, here comes another pothole, and I don't look forward to it. Bloomington and our elected officials work hard to bring business in, create a phenomenal area to live, a wide range of amenities, and of course, a few thousand restaurants. But all these great things are enjoyed just a little less when we have to drive over pothole after pothole to get there. A great dinner or a fun day at the pool becomes a little less fun when a car gets damaged because of a pothole or degraded road. When roads and potholes are fixed, we can all enjoy the city better. This is a great opportunity to invest in something that will have a positive return for everyone. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jordan.
Kathy Norton, and then to follow Dava Brooke Sal.
Hello, my name's Kathy Norton, and I'm also a volunteer with McLean County Moms Demand Action. So I want to thank you first for your time, but it's clear that we are facing a gun violence crisis right here in Illinois, and incidents of gun violences are increasing. In an average year, 1,505 people die and 4,148 people are wounded by guns in our state alone. The CDC just released new data confirming that 2020 was the deadliest year for gun violence in more than 25 years. And we have felt the pain and tragedy of that troubling trend right here in Bloomington. Each time we hold a vigil to mourn and remember victims in our community and ring the bell for each name, the list is longer and more difficult to get through. Every time we host a Wear Orange event to raise awareness of gun violence and hang an orange shirt with the name of a loved one, who was murdered in our community, we fill that clothesline over and over again. We don't need statistics to tell us that is too many. One is too many, and we know that. We can and must do more to save lives and protect our community from gun violence, and I urge the Bloomington City Council to vote yes and create a new special commission on gun violence. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Next.
Next is David Brooke Sal, and then to follow Serena Fish.
Shaw. That's fine. My name is David Shaw, and I'm a volunteer for McLean County Moms as well. I thank you for your time. My 40-year-old daughter, when she was 10 years old, found a loaded handgun by the tennis courts by Miller Park. Fortunately, she did the right thing, came home. She never touched it. We called the police and everything was taken care of. Things have obviously gotten exponentially worse since then. So when I first heard about Councilman Ward's proposal to form a special commission on gun violence, I felt I really understood the reason. I've been a part of Moms Demand Action for more than 4 years, and it is with a heavy heart that I say I have prayed with Councilman Ward many a time while survivor moms and families have grieved and tried to come to grips with what happened to their loved one murdered by gun violence. Moms Demand Action is an organization driven by passion for equity and justice for all and compassion for every person impacted by gun violence. but we are fueled by the data from the Every Town Research and Policy Organization, and all the victories we have accomplished started with rigorous research into data to better understand all the components that have created gun violence epidemic in Illinois. I support data collection and analysis as one of the goals of the Special Commission. It is critical that we come together to do the research and that we commit to take the action. Thank you.
Thank you, Deva.
Next up is Serena Fish, and then the last to speak will be Karla Bailey-Smith.
Hello. Two things I want to talk about. The ARP funds and looking at all the data and the information. I know that they cannot be spent directly on roads, but one of the ways we can use them to increase our roads, decrease potholes, decrease all the things that I hear constantly in the West Side is hiring more public works people, getting more jobs out there. I'm also administrator for West Side Neighbors meeting. We have a meeting coming up the 24th if anyone would like to attend. It's our second meeting for candidates who are running in the primary election. We've reached out, we're nonpartisan. We've reached out to government, GOP headquarters and Democrat headquarters of people that would like to sign up to speak. So I have one slot left in case anyone wants to make their position known. On the thing on gun violence, something needs to be done, but I also would like everybody in this room to be aware that a lot of the shootings, if not most of them, aren't on the West Side. They're on the East Side of Veterans. I stand for the West Side. Also, I just want you all to kind of get your facts straight and do a little bit more research. We have a lot of neighborhood associations in the West Side and different neighborhoods. We all come together when we need to come together. So please, if you're going to stand up here and talk about something, also remember one of the reasons that gun violence has become worse and is out of control is because we defunded the police. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Serena.
And last up is Karla Bailey-Smith.
Hello, I'm a Bloomington resident. I'm also a candidate for state representative, and I have the Gun Violence Prevention PAC endorsement. I am committed to being part of the solution to reduce gun violence in our communities, and I hope you are too. I urge you to support the Special Commission on Gun Violence. My son was in first grade. I always get emotional at this. My son was in first grade when Sandy Hook happened. And that is what prompted me to really start paying attention to legislation. My son is now 15, and he told me the other day as I was driving him to school that he lives in daily fear of a school shooting, and our children should not have to live like that. So let's work now to identify the root causes of crime, and to continue to educate our responsible gun owners on safe storage. I also urge you to be prepared to address the affordable housing crisis in our community. Crime will continue to rise if basic housing needs are not met. Thank you.
Thank you, Karla.
There's no further public comment.
Okay, thank you. The next item on the agenda is a consent agenda with only one item, which is consideration and action to approve the minutes of April 11th, 2022. Do I have a motion to?
I'll move.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay, moved by Councilmember Ward, seconded by Councilmember Bolin. And Madam Clerk, would you go ahead and do a roll call because I don't think there's discussion.
Councilmember Walsh.
Aye.
Councilmember Bolin.
Yes.
Councilmember Emig. Councilmember Becker.
Yes.
Councilmember Irvin.
Yes.
Councilmember Ward.
Aye.
Councilmember Crabill.
Yes.
Councilmember Crumpler.
Yes. Okay, thank you. The item passes. There are no nays to announce. And next item is the regular agenda. And 5A is the presentation on the American Rescue Plan as requested by the Administration Department. And there is no motion on this. It's just for presentation. And I'm going to turn it over to City Manager Gleason.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, and to the community. Ongoing conversation about the American Rescue Plan. Next slide, please. And there's only 6 total slides, so this is not going to be a very long presentation by myself, and allow the time to be spent by council to discuss this. The city of Bloomington will receive a total of $13.4 million. We've received half of those funds already. They must be obligated by December 31st of 2024, and then must be expended by December 31st of 2026. Council has either approved, obligated, or are considering $7 million, approximately $7 million towards infrastructure projects. $750,000 for the Locust Colton Phase 5 engineering was approved by council already. 1.16 million and some change for East Street hydraulic modeling. This has already been approved by council. And then $1.1 million for the Locust Colton Phase 4 and 5 construction. It's where we combine those 2 phases, shaving 2, possibly 3 years off of the total project time frame of 2029 down to 2026 or 2027. That's been obligated. And then conversations on asphalt and concrete, considering $4 million for additional road work in construction season 22 and construction season 23. Roughly $6.4 million is the current balance that's not been approved, obligated, or currently being considered for different projects. Next slide. Program overview, just very quickly. Anyone that goes to the PowerPoint can click on this link, and this is the fact sheet that dictates how the program is to be utilized, and this came out January of 2022. So there's been different iterations of the allowable uses, and we found that the federal government has expanded that significantly since this was first created. Allowable uses, the categories that can be found in that document, there's 4 of them. Replace lost public sector revenue, and this is one that is extremely broad and will allow for several municipal projects to be funded under this allowable use. Number 2, support the COVID-19 public health and economic response. Again, a rather broad category by design. Number 3 is provide premium pay for eligible workers performing essential work. Number 4, invest in water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure. And then that 5th bullet point is just simply a note that the American Rescue Plan in the January 22 document, that link says that recipients have very considerable flexibility in using those funds. Next slide. Next steps for consideration and for discussion. Consider pledging the remaining funds to general areas of use within the guidelines of the American Rescue Plan. And then council conversations up to this point have fallen into specific areas of interest. Note, while there is a broad flexibility, expending funds will be for allowable uses only. And then consider creating categories to cap fund limits in each category, adopt by resolution as a roadmap, really for staff and the community, and then bring the specific expenditures and projects before council for approval at the appropriate time. And I want to go over that third bullet point one more time, just for consideration for council discussion tonight, is to consider just rather broad categories with very specific uses at some point in the future. Those specific uses and projects would come back before council for approval. But again, looking for that template or that roadmap map to guide staff for the use of these funds. What I would consider, next slide, please. Areas of interest, and these are broad, and they fit under the 4 areas that I had previously mentioned. But when we replayed a lot of the conversations that we've had publicly and with council as side conversations or privately, you know, infrastructure truly is the one that we hear about the most. Consider pledging $9 million by resolution of this area at council on May 23rd. Let me explain that point. Council is going to ultimately decide if they want to dedicate to any of these broader areas, eliminate, but these are just some that we captured as staff that felt like, you know, the weight of the conversations. And if there was a percentage breakdown, we felt that the overwhelming majority was about infrastructure in general for the community. And that point that I make about bringing forward by a resolution to council next Monday at on May 23rd is just simply providing that roadmap. And that's not to say that a resolution that is adopted by council, it could be undone if there are higher priorities or a different area, because we have quite some time to expend these funds, to obligate and then expend these funds. But this is providing that potential roadmap at this point. Economic development is another area that we've heard about, and the remaining $4.4 million. I just split that in 2 of the last 2 bullet points. But economic development is a rather broad category that I'm proposing. Again, it would have to fit under the larger 4 allowable categories, and several of the things that we have discussed up to this point or considered would fit under that category as well. And then socioeconomic opportunities investment. Consider pledging that balance of $2.2 million by resolution to this area, again, at the council meeting on May 23rd. Really, this is an opportunity for staff to just hear what the vision of the council is regarding these funds. This is a conversation that by design was held for a few months, even though we did advance some of the other projects that were previously mentioned. And we're at that point. You know, we had the fiscal year 23 budget. We had some rather large developments to bring across the finish line. And this seemed like the logical time to have this conversation. Last slide. And I'm going to turn it back over to you, Mayor, for questions, comments, and I'll be available for any questions, Deputy City Manager as well. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Anybody has any questions that they'd like to ask? Okay, let's start with Councilmember Boland.
Yeah, under the economic development, could you explain or give an example that might fall under that? And also within the COVID parameters?
The COVID parameters, Alderwoman Boland, if I follow you, you know, the COVID parameter allowable use is one that's straight out of that federal document. The economic development one is one that we created as staff that based on some of the conversations and some of the considerations for use, that we threw out as a possible area for us to adopt. The COVID, truly, when I say that there is broad flexibility for using these funds under the federal document, there really is. And, yep, and there's an even longer version than that. I think that's the 44 or 46 page. That's part of that attachment. But the longer one, I think, is nearly 300. So, you know, I'm going to say that of the many things that we have discussed, we do not feel that there is really anything that is off limits. And I'll tell you the very first one where it talks about the loss of revenue, that's the one that probably allows for the broadest use, is anything that can be shown that is a loss of our revenue during COVID for the past 2 years, like the reduction in the local motor fuel tax for road work. You know, that's an area that we can apply those funds.
Okay. You're not going to like this. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, but on page 16, and this was from the link that was on the website on the bottom, it says that that general infrastructure projects, including roads, streets, surface transportation infrastructure, would generally not be eligible under this eligible use category. And then goes on to say, similarly, general economic development or workforce development activities do not respond to negative economic impacts of pandemic, but rather seek to more generally enhance the jurisdiction's business climate, would generally not be eligible under this eligible use category. So that, I mean, that kind of bothers me. So I wanted some clarification around that paragraph.
And I'm not going to be able to provide too much clarification. But there's key words there. Generally, I think is the one that truly stands out. You know, when we put this together, you know, we looked at, you know, there was quite a bit of conversation, myself and other staff members, and we are confident that those would be allowable expenditures. You know, that it falls into those exception categories or, you know, generally not allowed, but there's other areas where it would be allowed. And again, you know, I'm not locked into this presentation or this idea of adopting broader categories by resolution. Felt that this conversation was due to the community and to the council. And whatever direction council gives us, you know, I'll get my marching orders and I'll march.
Well, yeah, just under the infrastructure, I mean, I know the roads, the potholes, and loss of revenue from the motor fuel tax is important to consider, but is there any way that the water sewer work could be increased? I know we brought forward an acceleration for the CSOs, but I view that kind of stuff as health, you know, public health.
And I know that the conversation that occurred about this time last year, June of last year, with the storm event and the strong desire and commitment on the part of this council to advance Locust Colton. One of the things, there were many things that were shared, but one of the things was capacity of the contractors to be able to do even more work on that project. But we do have other projects. So to your question or point, yes.
And I'm going to go down to the economic development, and we had a comment about affordable housing. Now the CBGD grant basically is for single family housing. I'd like to see something along the lines of expediting development or redevelopment of multi-family homes downtown, with getting rid of red tape, basically. you know, moving it forward as fast as possible. And also consider something like scholarship for workforce development so that people can make more money and afford the housing that's available. And then on the socioeconomic development, yeah, I'd like to see that process through the economic development department so that there's accountability and if reporting is necessary for the federal funds, that might be important. That's all.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Bolin. All right, well, okay, we're gonna start with you, Councilmember Walsh, and then we have Councilmember Ward.
All right, thank you. Could we put the slides back, the slide presentation back up?
And EMIG.
All right, thank you. And I'm a little bit confused with the slide presentation. And part of this comes from, both my parents were math teachers. So ones and zeros bounce around in my head pretty dramatically sometimes. Oh, thank you. So my question is, when I look at this slide right here, slide number 2, the council has either, we've got a total of 13.4 million. And we've either approved or obligated 3 million, roughly 3 million there. And then an additional 4 million that we're considering. So let's focusing in on that 3 million that the council has approved for the Locust Colton, for the East Street hydraulic, and then an additional 1 million for the Locust Colton. So that takes 3 million away. But then when we go to slide 5, I went too far on my own. We go to slide 5 here. You've got that we're going to discuss considering pledging 9 million by resolution, and then an additional pledging 2.2 and an additional 2.2. That comes out to the 13.4 million. Well, the council's already approved just roughly $3 million. So we don't have an additional 13.4 million there. We have an additional, we have 10 million left to work with. And that's where my confusion comes in.
No problem at all. The numbers match. What I was doing was sort of starting from scratch. Yeah, go ahead and keep the slide up there. Just the 3 broader categories. And of the consider pledging $9 million, probably could have been worded better, but $7 million of that would fall into that $9 million under that category that I'm asking council to consider.
Okay, thank you. And I appreciate that. My next questions, and it goes to touching on the sewer and water part of this. And that is, we have a couple $100 million in sewer work to be done. And I kind of focus on sewer work here predominantly because when we talk about affordable housing and we talk about quality of life and things like that, I think everybody here would agree that having clean water coming out of our taps is pretty high up there in quality of life, and having working toilets in our home is pretty high quality of life. And having happens to be 2 people on my block who during our rain event had sewer water coming up in their basement. One of the groups it's 3 young ladies that had bought a house and had moved in together. They have really truly not recovered financially. They have not, and I know they have not recovered mentally. 2 of the young ladies have moved out. And things like that, knowing that, you know, we've got a quality of life issue here to deal with in the city, that allocating found money to fix a problem that we know we have, I think should be something that we should consider pretty greatly. So, thank you.
Thank you. Next, I'm going to go to Councilmember Ward.
Yeah, City Manager, I appreciate the model that you've offered to at least get us started in the conversation. The thing that I appreciate most is that there's some desire to seek some balance between the most urgent needs, but recognizing that there are multiple urgent needs. The way it's structured right now, we've already committed either formally or we are strongly considering committing fully half, if not a little bit more than half of the funds to infrastructure, specifically to sewers and waters. And I'm supportive of that. I mean, Ward 7 in particular got smacked pretty hard last June. I'm very supportive of that. I recognize that as a pretty high priority. There are also other priorities that I don't think that we can ignore as the community. And so I'm supportive of recognizing that with this found money, we also need to take a look at other things. I think one of the biggest issues in our society and in our community is a sense of rigidity, that it's either all or nothing, that we have this mentality in our society that everything's either black or it's white, it's right or it's wrong, it's yes or it's no, it's all or it's nothing. And I think this is an opportunity for us to demonstrate as a community that we recognize that there can be multiple needs and multiple good things, important things that we need to address. And that's why I support the model that you've got here roughly.
Thank you. Next is Councilmember Emig.
Thank you, Mayor. I keep doing that. And thank you for the presentation. I agree with Councilmember Ward, and I have a couple of questions, and that will help clarify, I think, all of our efforts to do this as we go forward. First is the question about capacity, and that has been asked before. So do we in fact have the capacity, if we were to say take more funds from the ARPA grant and apply them to fixing the roads, do we have the capacity to do more? And similarly with the sewer infrastructure that's needed, if we were to generate or put more funds in that line item, do we have the capacity to get that work done?
I think I feel the most comfortable, Alderwoman Emig, by saying I'd like to check into that. But a couple of weeks ago when we had the roads presentation for construction 2022, I sat back and actually commented that an area, when we talk about hiring additional public works employees and what are we able to do in-house that might take some of that load off of the sole contractor that we're dependent on. There is a piece of equipment that we've explored. It'd be a few $100,000, but it puts us somewhere in between what a prime contractor provides for the community and also us just throwing hot mix down on potholes. And it's something that we could consider investing in to try to address, some of the road work challenges, road problems that we have in this community. And then on the sewer side, we think about the sewer repairs, the water main repairs, stuff like that. There are other things that can put us in a position that, it may not necessarily be out in the field working on the sewers themselves. It could be design work. It could be some of that planning that's necessary for the variety of public works projects that we have. But to your specific question, I would ask for time to be able to respond back.
Thank you. I think that would be really helpful. And my other question is, do you know if there is any plan to go after some of the RAISE grants that are specifically dedicated to infrastructure? And I reviewed some of the communities that have already received awards. There were only 2 listed in Illinois, and the bulk of them, they are going to road work. They're going to implementing complete streets plans. There's some work around stormwater mitigation. There's some work around doing a lot of efforts to do more green infrastructure. And we already have a pretty good baseline of what we know the city is doing. And as Alderwoman Irvin has said to me, let's reach for something more, something better. So if in fact these raised grants are available, and I know they're competitive, but there's an enormous amount of funding right now for this kind of thing, do you anticipate going for that? And I know you don't have a crystal ball, nor are you Bruno, but can you see any opportunity for realizing some of those funds going forward?
I do. We have, two congressmen that represent the communities and obviously our two U.S. senators. Very good interaction with two of those. Actually had lunch just last week with Senator Duckworth's downstate chief of staff, and grants and opportunities was very much a part of that conversation. So yes, staff are aware, and we are exploring of the, multitude of grants that are available currently, the ones that would be most appropriate for the city.
Excellent. I think we have a good chance to get funding because we have such developed plans already. It's just a matter of fitting them to those categories. And finally, I just want to echo what Alderwoman Ward said about balancing needs, that there's so many urgent needs in the community. And when I think about the importance of maintaining our roads, that will be an endless ongoing project. They will never be perfect. They will never all be at the high end of the PASAR, but maybe we can get, most roads to the middle category. And at the end of the day, I want to say that in my community, we value not just asphalt, but people who are needing housing, safety, have food insecurity. There are ways that we can legitimately use ARPA funds for these socioeconomic concerns. So I do support at least considering projects that will meet those needs. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Can I have a motion to extend time?
I make a motion for 20 minutes.
20 minutes. Okay. Just quick roll call.
Councilmember Walsh?
Yes.
Councilmember Bolin?
Yes.
Councilmember Motney?
Yes.
Councilmember Emig?
Yes.
Councilmember Becker?
Yes.
Councilmember Irvin?
Yes.
Councilmember Ward?
Aye.
Councilmember Crabill?
Yes.
Councilmember Crumpler?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to go to Councilmember Crumpler.
Thank you, Mayor. And like other council members, I appreciate, Tim, I appreciate the three broad categories that you brought forward. And like other members of this group, I also am a strong supporter of infrastructure. Like all of you, I hear it every day in my ward, the roads, sidewalks, and that sort of thing. I also think we want to think about other possibilities too. One of the interesting terms that I read in the document that was sent to us today about affordable housing, it not only talks about affordable housing, it talks about housing security. And so as we think about affordable housing for our community, I would like to urge us to think longitudinally. The things I'm thinking about are incentives for developers to invest in existing infill buildings we have in our community. Publicize this as a priority. Reach out to developers who specialize in this type of work, and there are some. And offer incentives for them to come to Bloomington. And I think that's one thing that we could do, with some of this funding that would really make a difference. For lots of people. The second thing I want to talk about, and I think about this infrastructure, I also want us to think about broadband development. This evening, we're going to hear about My Bloomington, the new app development. We continue to increase access to city services, through web-based technology. Telemedicine becomes more mainstream, applications for job, financial assistance, myriad other programs require online access. And it seems to me, if we really want to think about equity, I encourage us, to consider how we might improve the quality of internet access, broadband resources for all members of our community. And I guess I'd like to end by saying, I think like Councilmember Ward, I want to think about the pluralities of possibility. I don't think it has to be an either or decision for us. I think there are lots of problems, but I think as a group, we can think together and begin to solve them with these funds. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Crampler. Next is Councilmember Montney.
So a couple of thoughts. First of all, I'd like to pick back up with the conversation about the sewer infrastructure. I have an outstanding question out to staff that I'd like to make sure we all have access to the answer to before we vote on directionally assigning these resources. It's been brought to my attention that we have neighborhoods that are in the 30+ year age, including Old Farm Lakes, for example, where underlayment was not appropriately placed beneath plumbing pipes, and these pipes are now starting to burst and cause backups into people's homes. I think we need to know what the scope of the potential issue is that we're dealing with. I believe the city staff has already acknowledged that they see this as a chronic issue, and it's just a matter of time and something that it's going to be the city's obligation to address. I think it extends well beyond that neighborhood, at least from the emails that I've seen going around. And I'd like to make sure that all of the members of the council have the opportunity to be aware of the breadth and depth of that issue and the financial significance of that issue to the community going forward. With regard to the streets, I'll be brief. Our current plans, we know, are only touching about 1.8% of our streets a year. We know we're losing ground on our street repairs, and we're already starting in the hole. So at some point, this is going to be an issue that, if not addressed, we will have decades of being required to spend money in order to catch up. So with that, I think, again, we just need to be thoughtful about what it would take financially to get us to what Councilmember Emig is referencing is good enough. I don't think we've seen that calculation yet to know what that impact would be. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Montney. Next is Councilmember Crabill. Shall I say last but not least?
Thank you, Mayor.
I tried.
First, I guess I think we need to consider in what we do that we're going to have to spend the money by 2026. So are there things going to be in the works and plans so that we can do that? And then, I want to focus kind of a little bit on what Tom said with regard to affordable housing, with regard to the 4 million in roads. I also saw on page 16 what Donna saw with regard to the questionable use of that. I don't see why we couldn't, like I said this before, use our general funds, because ultimately if we spend 4 million, then that's it. I mean, it's not an ongoing thing. ARP is a one-time thing. So we should set something up that's a reoccurring thing where we spend more money on the roads. But when we talk about housing versus roads, when we talk about like Pavlov's hierarchy of need, the first main one is one of them is having a roof over your head and not roads. Affordable housing is mentioned in that 44-page report a number of times. Page 18, page 20, programs and services to support long-term housing security, including development of affordable housing and permanent supportable housing. On page 18, this goes to I think what Julie has proposed with regard to a navigator position talks about emergency housing assistance, rental assistance, mortgage assistance. And so I think, we should be looking to spend some money on that. Even the EDC housing study talks about affordable housing. Affordability is one of the primary factors for meeting the needs of service and blue collar industries. And then also, I think on page 7 of that EDC report goes to some of the things that Jamie had in his initiative about a lot of our housing is older stock housing, which it's called naturally occurring affordable housing for the workforce, which emphasizes the need for policy that supports maintenance, community stabilization efforts, and home repair. Now, affordable housing are things that many other cities are doing. From a Treasury report, it talks about Denver, Colorado, 228 million, Norwich, Connecticut, 1.2 to create and sustain affordable housing units, Wilmington, Delaware, just rehabilitating older houses, Palm Beach County, 19 acres of county-owned land being developed. Polk County, Iowa is converting an underused hotel into 40 units of affordable housing, and it goes on and on. So I would like, and I don't really see any of those 3 categories specifically addressing affordable housing. A couple of other things I'll mention is one of the things I think we could use the money on is to make our downtown accessible, to be ADA compliant. And that goes in, I think it was page 33, it talks about revitalizing downtown areas. And then the last thing I'll just mention is the document referenced other sources of funding, including coronavirus capital projects, homeowner assistance funds, emergency rental assistance programs, and small business credit initiative, things that we can also pursue. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Becker, last but not least. No?
So
I'm gonna keep trying.
I want to agree with one thing that Councilmember Ward said specifically, and that is we do need to realize that everything isn't black and white, and there are compromises, and there are ways we all want the same thing here. We want to use the money to better the city, to improve life for all the people here. So we do have to accept that we may have different perspectives on how to do it, but we're all searching for the same goal. And I really want to focus on that because I'm going to take a little bit longer term approach and say, have any of you lived in a city that was on the huge decline and watched it decline over the years? I have. And it's not fun. And what happens when a city starts to decline is the businesses leave, the businesses shut down, your tax revenue goes down, and you continue to have less and less money to fix things. If we don't take care of what we have now, the problems are going to get worse. It doesn't mean right now some of these problems that are mentioned aren't important. It just means that they're going to get magnified immensely if we don't take care of the infrastructure really, really well. So I want to think about that. And to the question that was asked of Tim before, do we have the capacity? I'm going to disagree with Tim in one way, not really his answer, but because we have 2023, 2024, 2025, and 2026, we have the capacity to spend every dollar on any category we choose. We will find the capacity and we can spread the money around. So we do have the ability to put it where it's going to most positively affect this community. We just have to choose. The people that I believe know the best on how to efficiently do that are Tim and his staff. I want them to bring back very specific recommendations in these. I don't mind the lanes. I really like the lanes, but this is how we're going to use it. I do like Sheila's point about, the sewer issues. To me, that's a critical one that we have to take care of. The roads are there. We can use it for other things, but the reality is if we don't take care of the infrastructure, those other problems will be magnified tenfold in 10 years. So we have to do that now. Otherwise, we're going to have bigger problems that are going to be worse.
Yeah. Thank you, Councilmember Becker. And last but not least.
Yeah, I want to go back to what Councilmember Crumpler said regarding bringing in a developer. I view that as an investment, long-term investment that will benefit, if it's a multi-unit building, many people right away. And I would like to also add to that, get rid of some of the red tape so that it can happen quickly. And the other thing is that this particular document is for state and local, which would include obviously the state, county, municipality. And some of the points that Councilmember Crabill talked about really are more in the purview of the state. The some of the rental assistance, the state put out 15-month whatever it is, waiver for those that were behind on rent. The state put out business grants. So, you know, what I'm saying is we need to stay within our lane and spend the funds on what the municipal government would be for. Now, of course, economic development is part of that. And, you know, incentivizing affordable housing, I think that that would be reasonable. But I do think that infrastructure, and for me, it's the health infrastructure with the sewers. One other point I want to bring up, and that was when Kevin Cothy was talking about the street plan the last time. And the Pontiac company did not want to come here because, or wouldn't come here because they're penalized for not being a local. And the council, the majority of the council back in the day made that rule where we're going to use local companies. Now, to me, that makes sense for certain projects, but maybe we shot ourselves in the foot by eliminating the ability to use the Pontiac to help with the volume of infrastructure, you know, street resurfacing that needs to be done. I mean, these are just thoughts that I'm having from listening to the conversation, and you know, I'd like to continue the conversation, but have the staff bring back suggestions rather than us get into the weeds.
Okay, thank you. So I don't see any other questions, but a question I think for the city managers, do you think you have what you need? You've heard what you need, because from my standpoint, I think from what I've heard, you know, with the buckets that you've laid out, there is nothing that council members or ideas or projects that they would not fit in any of those categories. Does that sound accurate?
It is true. The conversations tonight and what we've heard in the past, I do not think that there's anything that would not fit under the allowable uses.
Okay. Sounds good. Okay. So with that, I think we're going to go ahead and move on to the next item on the agenda is item 5B, a presentation of the My Bloomington app as requested by the administration department. Again, it's another item with only a presentation, no motion. Presentation will be by Catherine Murphy, and I'm going to turn it over to City Manager Gleason for introductory remarks.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Catherine was hired almost a year ago, and this became a priority for her to look at what the community may not be aware is that the My Bloomington app has been around for several years. We're trying to push more residents to use this so that we can be more responsive as a municipal government, but wanted to ensure that it was working properly. So to Alderman Crumpler's point, in a lot of ways, this is the new and improved My Bloomington app. And I'm going to turn the floor over to Catherine, who has done a tremendous job in getting us to this point that we're communicating this to the community, that we would like you to use the My Bloomington app, and it's going to work as it's intended.
Yeah, let's clap for her 1-year anniversary.
Almost there. Well, as City Manager Gleason mentioned, he asked me to do kind of an in-depth assessment of where the app started, what's been going on with it, and really why it hasn't been used as much as it potentially could, or if it's even living up to its potential. Next slide, please. So we first introduced this in 2015. It really is a hotline to the city. Potholes, property maintenance, garbage collection, grass complaints, graffiti, anything that you can think of. You really can make a request on the app to get fixed. Garbage pickup, you need a cart swapped out for your recycling, that can happen too, 24 hours a day. Next slide, please. In the first year, from March of 2015 to December of 2015, there were 372 resident requests made through My Bloomington. Moving to last year, it gained in some popularity, and we had 10,456 resident requests made through the app and also through the website. Next slide, please. It really and truly is as fast and easy as you would think it would be. You click on, you make a request, and it goes through, it's channeled to the right workflow, the right person, and it's addressed in a very timely manner. Step-by-step workaround, there were some issues with software, probably about 2 or 3 years ago. A lot of it had to do with upgrading of phones, and we had some Android problems. When I got here, we worked out a step-by-step workaround, and any complaint that I've received, and I think IT also has fielded some, we provided the workaround and it has solved the problem. I have not had one person come back to me and say, it didn't work, or my phone is still crashing. And as a result of those system upgrades that are happening with both the app and as phones are getting newer and newer, those same glitches won't occur anymore. So there won't be a need eventually for that step-by-step workaround. Next slide, please. So these slides are really just walking through how residents or anybody can get the app and use it. It's as simple as searching for My Bloomington in the App Store on a smartphone. You install the app and you start submitting requests. Next slide, please. First page, or the number one, is what it looks like when you open the app on your phone. Number two, when you hit new request, it takes you to that menu, and then all of those arrows drop down to the different complaints that can be made. And then you submit it, submit a pothole, and off it goes to the right channels for people to address it, fix it. All of the requests are then given a priority level. Some of them are low priority, some of them are high priority. And that's how it's determined what speed they're going to be put in the process for people to fix. Next slide, please. So the app isn't the only way to access it. A lot of people don't want to install an app on their phone. They have too much Candy Crush and things like that. They don't want to install something new. You can also access it through the website. You just start at cityblm.org. You click on the I want to from the drop-down menu, click on My Bloomington, which is on the right-hand side, and you can start submitting requests. Next slide. This is just a close-up of what the drop-down looks like. Also, underneath that arrow, the My Bloomington logo, you can also just click on that if you don't want to, if you can't see the little teeny tiny print. Next slide. This is what it looks like on the web when people go there to try to submit or submit a request. It's just that view from there. Next slide, please. So given the history with the current app, sticking with it was determined really to be the best option. They provide so many services for a relatively low annual cost. They deliver increased information with GIS and imagery, and it allows for very efficient and quick response to the requests. And the cloud-based technology eliminates the need for the purchase and installation of any additional infrastructure software and hardware. And it really does reduce the time to value. Next slide, please. And that's my Bloomington app. The customer service aspect of it is a big thing that Tim tasked me with. Every day, first thing I do is come in and I run a report for the last 24 hours, see what has been submitted, what has been addressed, and if there's anything that sticks out as having maybe not been addressed, I call the department. I'll send an email to the person. We've got people who are in each department dedicated to being the My Bloomington person.
All right, thank you very much, Catherine. And I'm gonna turn it over to council for questions. Okay. Seeing Councilmember Crumpler, Bolin, Crabill. Wow, everybody. Okay, let's go with Councilmember Crumpler.
Thank you, Mayor. Catherine, thank you so much for this presentation this evening. I guess my question, I think is a pretty simple one. How would you characterize the relationship between the hub and the My Bloomington app? Because when I look at and other than maybe the hub doesn't have an app, but if you're going through each website, it looks to me like there's duplication of services. So for example, when I get on the hub app, I can, report potholes. I can also report my trash wasn't picked up. So could you just talk about that a little bit? They are one and the same. So they are. So you're saying they are.
They're one and the same.
So whichever one I put my request on, it goes to the same place.
Correct.
Okay, that's easy.
Very
Thank
loud.
You. All right.
We like easy. Councilmember Crabill.
Thank you. Thank you, Catherine. I like learning about kind of the inside, how it operates on the inside, and didn't really appreciate how much work that you put into it to make the connections with the persons in each department to make sure that the requests are completed. And I know that we've gotten around some software issues, so it should be easier for people to use, but I didn't really see any changes to the app itself or kind of what's on there and the categories. And is that correct?
We are working on that as far as adding extra categories. I know that we're right in the middle of working on adding a parks category so people can make playground complaints. Right. They can make safety, if they have safety concerns or if they just want a general question or comment, we're adding to those apps. We've just added the employment job board is on that front page now on the app. So we're limited as far as space goes. Obviously, when you're holding the phone, you don't want 17 categories just on the front page. But as you click on each one, it opens up to new categories.
And then the app itself, there's also, you can actually click on, you get the city's webpage. One of the things I thought about, probably not a good idea, but should there be an other option?
I think you can make, I should ask Craig, they can make just comments, right? Yeah, you can just make comments through the app.
And then, so yeah, you can do that now? And where would you go to do that?
It's listed as, do you remember? Yeah, just other requests.
Okay, because I don't see that on there now. But I can look for it.
Okay.
But I'm assuming.
And I can look for it and send it to you, send that information to you as well.
Okay. Okay. And then who decides priority? I was kind of looking at that example, and then there was one person that I think had 4 requests out of the 7 that were shown, and some were medium or low. And who makes a priority?
That's done by the department that it goes to.
Okay. Another or suggestion would be, can we put this on the front of our website versus if you have to click on something and you have to know which thing underneath to click on.
It actually already is at the very bottom of the front page of the website.
Okay.
You can click there too and do the.
Okay. Maybe the top, but that's just my idea.
Sure.
Let's see.
We are redesigning the website too, so a lot of things will change.
How does the search option work? I noticed that in the app.
That's a technical question for Greg.
Can you search just to see if somebody else has made the request or same request?
Doesn't it show up?
So the first search box you come to is to search for request types. So as we build out various request types and have, dozens and dozens of request types, that's the first search that you'll hit. Once you're in a list, you can search that list as well.
Okay. And then I just wanted to point out, I think the purpose of this is to encourage people, right, to go to this site first versus maybe coming to us and then we relaying it. I think most of the time for me, that's what I do, but there are occasions where say, well, I've tried to reach out to the city and I haven't gotten a response yet. And in those situations, I feel I need to take kind of that next step if they haven't got what they feel is an appropriate response. So,
sure.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. A lot of hard questions. Let's see. Councilmember Boland.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. I've been using it, but I have an iPhone. I mean, I've been using it since 2015.
Mm-hmm.
The only feedback that I've gotten from residents when I suggest it is that they're techno averse. So, there are times where I will use the app to pass their information on, and it's very successful. I want to point out you can take a photo and upload it and send it. And you follow up with emails. The department follows up with emails to tell you the status.
Right.
So just kudos.
And I do that as well when residents call and I don't have a smartphone, I don't have a computer, I will then go to the app and I will enter their information and their request for them too.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Let's see. Okay, Councilmember Emig.
This is kind of my journey as a city councilor, because initially when people would call about things that I knew were on the app, I would just enter it on the app for them. And then I got better about, hey, there's an app, you can use this, right? And then sometimes that helped, but a lot of times folks just were uncomfortable with the technology. And I think there's a gentleman in my neighborhood who, for some reason, often he has complaints about garbage. So I kept getting that, and then he said, finally, but I don't use the smartphone, and now I know there's a way to send him to do it. But I just keep thinking, how can we make the technology more accessible and almost in your face, if you will? I don't know if this is possible to have a QR code in all of our public areas, swimming pools, parks, playgrounds, where there's just a place with a QR code, My Bloomington app, something that folks can just, for the most of us who do happily use our smartphones, I think that might be a way just to get more people onto the platform.
Absolutely. And the hub does have a QR code that for the app, yeah. And the hub also enters information if people call in. They also will put the folks' requests in.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Walsh. Yeah, George.
Thank you. Being the true IT geek here, this is an awesome app. I just downloaded it here during the meeting. Prior to being on the council, I knew absolutely nothing about the app.
Wow.
Well, I got a nice little presentation last Monday, a little preview into what it can do. And what I see here is absolutely awesome. I think the QR code is fabulous idea. You know, I even just had a thought of what if we incorporate the chevron into our QR code for the app. Just a thought. I mean, you can do things like that. And so, you know, I look at it and I just have a couple of questions on it and comments on it, being this is what I do.
Right.
Okay. And my first question, it goes to add-ons and enhancements to the application. And one thing that is always helpful and to the people doing the coding and writing the app for us and things like that is let's make sure that we're not, okay, if we have a scope of this is what we want to see by July 1st, let's make sure we aren't going and then the second week of June going, hey, can we also get this by July 1st? That's when we change scope of IT projects and we really push on IT projects like that, to change that scope at the last minute like that, that's when things break. And it's better to have something working and then add those things in later. My next question is, with the app, and we see the 10,000 plus uses last year, how has that increased or decreased, I guess I would say would be a better word. How has that increased our mean time to recovery for issues that residents are reporting? Has there been any study done, any just cursory study, even at that, to see, you know, look, this is how long it used to take us to resolve problems. Now, because of the app, it's got to be decreasing. Question is, how much is it decreasing?
I don't know if we actually have those numbers, but it seems like if somebody's going to go to the app and say, my garbage didn't get picked up, it's similar to that same person making a phone call saying, my garbage didn't get picked up. So I'm guessing that the response is relatively the same.
Okay, it just means that we don't have to have somebody pick up the phone and say, good morning, City of Bloomington. It pops up on people's screen. Okay,
correct.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Next is Councilmember Ward and then Montney.
Yeah, just another quick suggestion. So when I have a chaplain who's on call at the hospital, I'm the backup person. And when somebody's paging the on-call chaplain, they get a little message that says, this is my first attempt or this is my second attempt. And if it's the second attempt, it comes directly to me. And so I'm just wondering if there'd be any way to incorporate something like that, not necessarily that it goes directly to you, Catherine, or any one person, but that there be some way to signal that, you know, I've tried to get this resolved once already, and now it's my second time trying to get this resolved, to kind of get at what Councilmember Crabill was pointing out, where some people, you know, maybe they are frustrated and they say, well, I already tried that and it didn't work. Just a thought.
And people have mentioned, like, if they do have to make a second request, they do mention that in the comments. And then that's one that I red flag and kind of run it up the pole even faster.
Yeah, I guess I wonder if seeing that as an option in front of them might reassure them that, oh, you know, it's not just going to disappear out into the universe, but that I can try back if it, you know, if I need to. That's my point, that it might signal that we're responsive and that we care, that it's your second attempt.
Absolutely. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Motley.
Okay. All right. Hey, thank you for doing this. And I really appreciate learning more about this. Similar to the questions previously, I think it would be awesome to see, like, of that 10,000, how many of those are unique users versus people who are just routine users, if you will.
And we can run that report.
And what that's trending like over time, because if one of our objectives is to increase the adoption rate, then tracking that metric and being aware of that metric, I think would be helpful.
Sure.
I do think, like, time to fulfill is something that would be very helpful for us to learn, because we already know there's a tremendous amount of variability depending upon the complexity of the issue reported. But the overall lead time from first notice to we close this out, I think that would be very helpful to know so that we could see if we're actually improving service delivery over time. That's
excellent.
It. Thank you. I think that's about, oh, sorry, Councilman Becker. Oh, sorry, I didn't see your light.
So just a couple quick ones for you. To me, the ones where I've had people run into trouble is, again, what we talked about the longer term issue, not to pick up my garbage. It's the one that I submitted this, I had an interaction with the city, and then they said they'd get back to me, and 2 weeks went by, and I want to re-up. When I deal with customer service issues, we have more of the idea of the Domino's pizza tracker, right? I know exactly where my issue is in the process at all times. And generally that will keep people's expectations in line and keep them happy. In the absence of an answer, what do? They make up the worst possible case. I'm being ignored.
Right.
So I think I have had trouble with the app in the past. We found out why today, completely unrelated to the app, just some data in there. But if we can get it to where it is very clear what the status of my issue is, and then again, I don't want to go enter the same issue again. I want to be able to go in and say, hey, not done. It's been 2 weeks. I want to escalate it. So I didn't quite grasp if you were talking about that versus resubmitting it again. When you talked about you would follow up on issues that weren't closed.
Oh, with the department, that's, if I see something that is flagged as still either submitted or just as received, and I'm seeing a due date, because we do have due dates on everything. If I'm seeing that it's overdue, I'm escalating it internally.
Okay. And then the only other thing I would say is when people do call me, in the past, I just said, I'm not using the app anymore. I apologize. I went to the hub and I would send the issue to the hub and say, please copy me on the resolution because this person called me. I want to be able to respond to them. 10% of the time, maybe, do I get copied on it? That request completely gets ignored.
Okay.
So if someone puts something in and says, hey, copy my alderman, I consider that part of the, I don't want to say fun, but part of the enjoyment I get out of this thing is to interact with the people in the ward and make sure that they feel like we do care. So just a feedback there is that we should have the ability to be copied and aware of the things that happen that we're looking into.
Absolutely.
And right now, I don't see that happening very often.
Okay.
I may have one that I'll give you later tonight too.
Okay.
Okay, well, it sounds like we've exhausted all the possible questions. So Catherine, want to thank you very much for all the work you've done. I know it's a tough job and you still have to do your communications job. So it's amazing.
I enjoy it.
Thank you. Great job. Great job. And thank you, Craig, as well for your help. Okay. Next item on the agenda is our city manager's discussion.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Mateus, the first slide. Actually, the first two slides are staff hires. We've had a fair amount in the last month, and they're on the screen. Justin, Ayana, Lydia, William, Sandra. Next slide, please. We have Joshua, Adrian, Nick, and Chance. Next slide, please. June 7th, 8th, and 9th, Miller Park Zoo, animal crackers, educational classes, and then art classes and both information on both those can be found bloomingtonparks.org, the website. Last slide, please. Pool passes on sale now at bloomingtonparks.org. Holiday pool opens May 28th, so that's coming up very soon. That's a Saturday. And that is it for the slides, and I have nothing additional, Mayor. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. There's no executive session, and we're going to move on to an adjournment. So, motion.
I'll make that motion.
Okay. Second by Councilmember Ward. Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, we are adjourned. See you next Monday or before. Who knows?